Triumphant tribute continues. And with only 2 races left in this year's anniversary celebration of the Trans Am Series, here's how the championship points race looks. In a word, close. Hi everybody and welcome to a very special day here at Road America. I'm Greg Creamer, and along with my expert commentator and former Trans Am competitor Brian Till and pit reporter Calvin Fish, we'll be bringing you our coverage of the 36th running of Trans Am on this glorious 4-mile circuit. Let's get you right to the starting lineup. Remember, in Trans Am, they invert the top 5 qualifiers. 5th qualifier, Greg Pickett, starts inside of the front row, joined by Randy Ruhlman, who's been the recipient of some, well, developments this weekend.
Randy Ruhlman has been in charge of the points in the Trans Am Championship throughout the 2005 season. That all changed in qualifying this weekend. Klaus Graf now has a 2-point lead, but Randy, it's not only Klaus you have to worry about. I understand you have the flu.
Well, yeah, we've been fighting the bug all weekend long, and fortunately the guys have given me a very fast car, and it's been a little incentive as well because not feeling too well makes me want to get off the course that much faster, so we're going to try to turn up the wick in the race.
Yeah, we move to row 2. Max Legat, always fast here, and Michael Lewis, who won here in 01. Row number 3 is Klaus Graf and Paul Gentilozzi, and Klaus Graf was on the other side of that pendulum swing that Brian talked about just a bit ago.
Klaus Graf had been chasing Randy Ruhlman all season long in the Trans Am Drivers' Points Championship, but it took only 1 lap in qualifying here at Road America to turn the tables. Klaus, what a difference a day makes.
Yes, I mean, really good. It's a really good system to get 3 extra points for pole position. I tried really hard to get it.
Indeed, we continue row 4. John Bockham and Joey Scudolo, very quick. Row number 5 is going to bring us Cliff Eben, the fastest of the GT1 Trans Am cars, and John Schaller. Row number 6, Paul Fix and Hema Meyer. Row number 7 is Jeff Emery and Tim Cowan. Row number 8. We're going to continue with Jim Bradley and Tommy Dreese, who actually qualified quicker, but we'll start at the back. They had to do some work on the car, so he was moved a little bit further back in the pack. Row 9, Kurt Roehrig and Steve Kelsel. Roehrig, the fastest of the GTA cars. Guy Dreyer, who won GTA at Denver, and Monica Colvin will be in row 10. And all alone with no qualifying time in the 11th row, Tim Barber is the GTA points leader. Now, we know that Trans Am competition here at Road America is always very, very hot. But, Calvin, for a guy last year, it was hotter than he would have liked.
Absolutely, for our 2001 Road America Trans Am winner, Michael Lewis. Last year's return to the scene was not a happy one. He had problems underneath the hood of his Jaguar. The engine caught fire and eventually erupted into flames. Very scary moment indeed. Mike had to bail from the car. The car was absolutely toasted, burnt to the ground, and the team went to work in the off-season. They've done a great job rebuilding the car. The car's been fast here all weekend long. Ultimately qualified second to our fastest qualifier, Klaus Graf. He'll roll off 4th here today, Brian, with the inverted start.
Well, and these Trans Am cars around Road America are so much fun to drive. Long racetrack, over 4 miles long, 14 corners, some great opportunities to pass. Here in Turn 5, down at the bottom of the hill in Turn 8, and what we call Turn 12 or Canada Corner. Also such long straightaways, cars up over 170 miles an hour, Greg.
Incredibly quick, great racing, and you're going to get some serious looks from the gentleman who is now the winningest driver in Trans Am. And, well, it appears, too, we're going to be looking from Tommy Dreese as well, carrying the Transporter 2 logo on the car. And Dreese, a former Trans Am winner as well. So, going to be enjoying those shots. Dreese, as I said, qualified very strongly, but due to some changes on the car, starting a little bit further back in the pack. Here's a quick look at the manufacturer's points. And Jaguar, if it wins here, can leave with another championship. It'll be its 3rd straight, 5th overall in Trans Am, and the odds are pretty good. Out of the last 5 races here in Road America for Trans Am, Jag has won 4 of them, 01, 00, 03, and 04. And when we come back, we're going to bring you the green flag of this amazing series and its tremendous run at this phenomenal racing facility. Perhaps no single driver has meant as much to the Trans Am as Mark Donohue. Competing for only 5 years, the Crown Prince of this prestigious series piled up an amazing 3 championships and 29 wins. Those wins stood the test of time for nearly 30 years until this past July when Paul Gentilozzi took the checkers in Toronto and posted his 30th series victory. Still, as Paul himself will tell you, Donohue remains the man to beat, and in fact won here in 1970 and 71. Now we're going to show you a list of some of the other drivers who have had multiple wins here at Road America. And if you win once here, you've done something. You win more than once, you've done a great job. Of course, Tommy Kendall has the most with 4, and Dorsey Schrader, our own Speed Channel guy, is also on this list as well with a couple wins.
I, unfortunately, am not on that list. Neither are you, Greg.
But you tried hard. You tried hard. You gave it your best.
Trans Am cars around this Road America circuit are so much fun to drive up underneath the bridge there, coming through 13 and onto the front straightaway. That's a really fun section. You're down there, Canada corner, come running up the hill. You got to get that great run onto the front straightaway.
Well, and that's a blind turn in underneath the bridge abutment. I mean, it is gut check, and there's so much of that here. The kink, the carousel, and we are about to unleash a large field here for this 36 running. Ooh, a little bit of smoke back there. Hop on board with Tommy Dreese, and here's the climb up this hill, and folks, it is much steeper than it looks here, and lugging it up here, and these guys at the back of the pack sometimes don't even see the green flag when it flies.
Yeah, absolutely. You're back in the back, you're blind, but these guys up front are not, and the green flag is out. It'll be the run to turn 1.
Pickett on the inside, that's Ruhlman, the blue and white car, and look at Jen Losey taking a look at Mike Lewis making a big move, protecting and getting by Max Lagat, but it is Pickett who leads through. We drop back with Dreese, who sits back in the pack there behind the number 78 of Ema Meyer. And Dreese now, this is up into turn 3. It's still Pickett, then Ruhlman, then Lewis. Very close racing right there indeed. Looked at red and white Corvette of Cliff Evan, a multiple June Sprints winner here, and always very fast on this track. And here we go, the blast all the way down to turn 5.
Down to turn 5. One of the fastest sections of the racetrack as you run down the hill into the slowest corner at the racetrack.
Downhill braking zone, and that makes it just a little bit intricate, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and then a very tight corner, 110 degrees. It's more than 90 degrees. When you kind of stand outside and look at it, it seems like a 90-degree corner, but it's more than that and very, very slow. And these cars about 50 to 55 miles an hour.
Boy, Jen Losey tried to get around the yellow vet of Max Lagat. Now he takes a look going into 7. That's a iffy place to make a pass, and he wisely backs out of it. And remember, Mike Lewis sitting there in 3rd, that black and orange Autocon Jaguar. He's the one that car burned almost to the ground last year, but qualified 2nd quick here, running awfully well. And Jen Losey continues to hound right now. That is Graf right there behind Max Lagat, then Jen Losey right with him, and both of them right now are really hounding Max Lagat as we hop on board once again with Dreese. A little bit different camera angle here, chasing John Schaller, who's got a June Sprints win here, but it was in an Atlantic car, actually a Super V car running Atlantic, and Schaller, I tell you, somebody dropping a tire off in the kink.
I was getting ready to say, Dreese looking to the inside there. That's not the place that you want to go by somebody at the kink, the fastest area of the racetrack, over 130 miles an hour in a Trans Am car, and there is no braking going on there, so you can't just outbrake somebody. Look at the battle continuing back here.
That's Jen Losey and Bacham, and Jen Losey looked like he dropped the wheel exiting Canada, killed his momentum. Bacham tried to take a run, and Jen Losey just saying thank you, no, and slamming the door shut.
I said, that's not going to happen here, but you talk about the start, and you can see as Pickett pulling out a good lead going up the hill, but Randy Ruhlman did a great job at the start, too. He needs to play it safe a little bit because he can't afford to damage the car and drop out, but at the same point in time, that man right there, Klaus Graf, in that Jaguar going up the inside of the Corvette, he's got to keep in mind that Graf is ahead of him in points now, so Randy Ruhlman's got to charge, but at the same point in time, needs to make sure that he's taking care of the equipment.
And Graf lays the pass on the ecom.com software Corvette of Max Lagat. And Lagat it's good to see him being competitive here. He's always very quick. There's a look at Randy Ruhlman. Remember, came in here as the points leader. And this year, after so many years running at Trans Am, he truly loves it, is devoted to the series. He got his first couple of wins, including Long Beach, which is hugely prestigious.
Well, and obviously disappointed to lose the championship lead to Klaus Graf because of that qualifying. But they actually did a pretty smart thing. They saw where Randy Ruhlman was in qualifying, and they said, look, he's 4th right now. We can keep him out and let him keep pressing and pressing. He may pick up maybe one position. He doesn't have a car for the pole right now. And if we keep him 4th, he'll start on the front row. If he qualifies 3rd, he'll start further back. So really a good strategic call to say, hey, we'll take 4th because he's going to get the start on the front row.
And Max Lagat now, as it would appear, maybe that Lewis, this car right here, holding Graf up just a little bit. Lagat is starting to chomp at the bit. And one of the things that you see in this series that I think is sorely lacking for many others is watching these cars come out of these tight corners is they light them up. They carry nice big slides through the turns. You really have to drive and hustle these cars, and that makes it very exciting. And again, Lewis right there, that black and orange Jaguar chased hard by the green and silver car of Graf. And here comes Max Lagat. Big late braking move down into Canada Corner. One of the passing zones you talked about, maybe the best on the track. And Graf working over Lewis, and Lagat just jumped on it.
Well, and the thing about Graf right now, he needs to keep in mind, he's going to be frustrated by these two cars that are around him, Max Lagat and Michael Lewis. Those guys are not in the championship hunt. They haven't run all the races this year. They're spoilers in his championship hunt. And right now, they sit between himself and Randy Ruhlman.
Well, Lagat got held up by Lewis coming out of 14, and it gave Graf a big run. And Graf again heading down into turn 1, going to make the move. Look at the differentials there as we show them to you at the line. And Graf moves by Lagat, and it was primarily because Lagat really got a great run out of 14, and Lewis did not. And Graf able to jump on it. And you can see, though, that little bit of dicing has now allowed Lewis to open up a little bit of a margin as he now tries to run down Randy Ruhlman sitting in second. So the battle for second heating up. The battle for third is just plain good, and it has been. And look at Lagat all over the place now, losing a little touch of Graf, now trying to come after Lewis. This is for third.
Well, Graf certainly seems to have the speed down the straightaways, but it was Lagat that had better brakes earlier, but this time Klaus Graf gets it done over Michael Lewis, and now right on the back bumper of Randy Ruhlman. There's your championship right there.
And up into turn 6, Ruhlman second in the championship points. Graf leading now by only 2 points as they work their way toward Hurry Downs, they call it. A beautiful, very quick section of track. High speed, fall away right-hander, and you just have to be willing to just go after it. Graf thinks about the move into 8, elects not to at this time. And an amazing story. And by the way, if Klaus Graf finishes, if he wins the championship this year, he can certainly clinch Rookie of the Year here. But if he wins the championship here, he'll be the first German driver to ever do it in Trans Am. Although Walter Röhrl, of course, put up some great runs in the Audis many years ago. Great section of track here through the kink down into Canada Corner. Here's the current top 5, and you'll notice that Klaus Graf has worked his way into the second spot, and he is closing in on Greg Pickett. As a matter of fact, has pretty much closed it up on Pickett. There is the margin. Pickett, that yellow and silver Cytomax Jag, and Graf right behind him coming out of turn 14. And Graf, Brian, has been able to get very solid runs out of 14, and he is tucked in behind Pickett right here. Graf has been able to make a couple of passes going down into the first turn. He sets him up, moves to the inside. It's going to be a late braking duel. Graf has the momentum, and he gets by and does so rather easily. I think Pickett, a pretty savvy driver, knew that he was had and decided better not to fight it this time.
Yeah, Greg's a great guy to race with. Held his line. No dirty driving tactics on the part of Greg Pickett. He's been at this game for a long time, and he knows, too, hey, Klaus Graf can go and burn the tires off that thing. So I'm going to sit back. I'm going to run my pace. He gets by me right now. No big deal. But that pass started back in 14. Graf got a great run out. You saw Pickett slide the car on the way out. And that little loss of momentum is what allowed Klaus Graf to work his way by. Up the front straightaway, this is where the pass actually happens. It really began back in 14, like we said. You see Pickett out there on the outside. And as you pointed out, Greg, Pickett just saying, all right, it's over for now, but I'm going to come back on you later. I'm going to save some car to the end.
Well, Pickett won here in 78, and that was the year he won the championship, so he's very solid. But we saw Calvin Fish, a great braking duel down into turn 1, and this track historically, brakes can play a role, can't they?
They really can. I mean, big, heavy Trans Am cars going 180 miles an hour and down to 50 for some of these turns. That's a lot of speed you have to bleed off, so they have to be careful. But they made a lot of progress over the year. But talking to Klaus Graf, he is going to use that water reservoir that the teams are allowed to use, about 3.5 gallons. And how he uses it is once the brakes go a little bit soft, that's when he starts to use the water. It doesn't bring them back, but they don't get any worse. But talking to Jim Durhag and the Randy Ruhlman car, he said, we've got a great package from Performance Friction. We're very confident with the brakes. We're not going to use the water brakes. And in fact, he said, I even taped up the brake ducts during qualifying. That's how confident they are. We'll see which strategy works at the end of this one.
Well, it'd be very interesting to see that play out. We're back in the pack just a little bit. There is the number 1 of Gentilozzi. There is Mike Lewis. That's 5th. And coming up very hard astern right now of Lewis is Tommy Dreese. Remember, Dreese started well back in the pack, and Dreese has been absolutely flying right now, running some of the quickest laps of the race.
He's on a charge. We're on board with him right there, coming through 14 onto the front straightaway. Lewis actually a little better run off 14 that time. You see how they kind of gapped as they came off the corner, but Dreesy's going to sit there in the draft of Michael Lewis and see if he can't get a little bit of a draft on him as they get a little closer to turn 1. Over 170 miles an hour right here, and then on the brakes, he's got it.
Got him down to the inside. Lewis feints in a little bit, but knows he too had the pass made and just let him slide on through. And Tommy Dreesy is absolutely hooked up. Dreesy, another member of the Rocket Sports team, and has some great equipment and just loves this series as well. Transporter 2, of course, Dreesy, his company makes those cardboard stands that you see advertising in movie theaters. So every race he's got a different movie on, one of the movies that their company is promoting. And for Mike Lewis, after such a good start, good qualifying run, he now is back in the 6th spot. But boy, not like he's letting Dreesy go.
No, Lewis right there closing up under brake. There's 3 sections on this racetrack where these Trans Am cars are approaching or over 170 miles an hour. So the draft does come into play. They're coming through turn 6 right now, through 7, this right-hand kink, and then down the hill into turn 8. Out of 8, they'll go through the carousel and onto one of the longest straightaways down into Canada Corner, another place where you can get some drafting help to get by. That's exactly what Tommy Dreesy did when he got by Michael Lewis. And Dreesy loose at the exit there. You actually saw brake lights come on at the exit of the corner. Tommy Dreesy a little wide there at the exit, having to gather things up.
Yeah, a lot of horsepower in this car, on these cars, and just kind of throws it sideways. Calvin?
Well, we talked about Tommy Dreesy getting a little bit loose there. Mike Lewis had radioed into David Steele, his crew chief, to say, Paul Gentiluzzi's dropping so much oil, I can barely see. So we saw Dreesy make the move on Lewis, but maybe now he's starting to slip and slide on something that may be coming out of that jack. Hasn't been a smooth weekend for the Rocket Sports team. Dreesy had to change the motor starting from the back of the pack today, and Gentiluzzi's on his 2nd motor already.
Well, this track, you are on full throttle so long and so often here, Brian Till. It historically does take its toll. You know, we talked about brakes and the light, but motors, I mean, you're at high rev for so long.
Absolutely. I mean, your foot is buried down these long straightaways, a 4-mile racetrack like we talked about. And with these 3 long straightaways, as you said, that you're in that throttle for a long time. It can take its wear and tear on these cars.
And right there is our GTA leader right now, and the GTA points leader, Tim Barber, and it had a real problematic qualifying session, never even got a time in, but has rebounded smartly during the race. Boy, he's coming up, and person he's chasing right there, a lot of smoke coming out of the back of the number 9. I believe that's the number 9 GTA entry of Steve Kelso, and so Barber trying to run him down and get by him. Speaking of dropping oil, Elkhart Lake, that's the lake, and now you see why. Aside from the racetrack, tourists flock to this little town. From the very beginnings of the Trans Am tradition, Bob Tullius proved to be a force with which to reckon. His Group 44 Jaguars set the scene for decades of competition, highlighted by his becoming the first driver to repeat as Trans Am champion in 1977 and 78. Those same years saw him taking the checkers here at Road America, and as we all know, his Jaguar legacy still lives on in the series. Truly one of the greats in the history of this great series. And you see right now, there's 3 Jaguars, 1, 2, 3. So that very storied tradition of the Jaguars continues. And in spite of the recent form of the Rocket Sports team, it's Greg Pickett's Jaguar that this season so far has contributed more points to the manufacturer's lead that Jaguar has than any other Jaguar team combined. So that's just, now we had a caution while we were in break, and here's the reason why. That is John Schaller in the number 03 Camaro just got it a little bit wrong going into that legendary Canada Corner, and it got away from that Central Power Distributors car, but he's able to get going again, and then we had the restart. Obviously everybody bunched up, and Dreesy took a look at Ruhlman, couldn't quite get it done, and settled back in behind. Now we're back on board live with Tommy Dreesy in the 5th spot. That is Randy Ruhlman in front. Dreesy clipped that curve going into the kink pretty good. He had to get out of it.
Oh, I mean, that was, we talked about the kink. You slow down in a Trans Am car just a little bit. You take about 10 or 15 miles an hour off. You probably do that with a breath off of the throttle, but you got to be really careful there. He was way wide. Calvin?
Well, we see a lot of the guys using those rumble strips. We just saw Tommy Dreesy there through the kink. And what it can do, Brian, is really rattle the brakes around and actually get some knockback on the pads. It works the pads back in the caliper, so when the driver goes for the brakes at the next corner, he has a long pedal, so the drivers have to be very careful to recognize that and really pump the brakes back up so they don't have a mistake or a problem when they get to the next one.
Oh, here's a huge development. That's the number 97 of Tim Barber. Again, the leader in the GTA division. Now, there are a couple of different classes right now that run Trans Am this year, and he was the points leader coming in here, has had problems all weekend long, never got a qualifying time in, and now parked very early in the going here. So his season's still looking pretty good. He had a pretty good lead in the points, but his day is certainly looking pretty problematic here. There's Klaus Graf leading, and the Rocket Sports Jag number 7 is drawn away a little bit from Pickett. Then Gentilozzi, Ruhlman, and Dreese as we hop on board with Tommy Dreese. Here's the run now through 3 and down into turn 5. Right here, boy, it really drops off.
That heavy braking area coming from about 170 miles an hour down to 50, 55 miles an hour through there. Calvin talking about brakes. I can tell you from driving a Trans Am car at this racetrack, you really have to be concerned about it. We talked about the water cooling, and from time to time, you'll see the brake lights. You may be able to see Randy Ruhlman's as he heads down into turn 8. You'll see these guys, a little flicker of the brake lights just before they get to the braking zone, reaching over there with their left foot, just kind of pumping that pedal, making sure it's up, it's solid, making sure that, as Calvin said, those brake pads are coming back to the rotors. And it looked like Ruhlman had a big slide off of 8.
Yeah, he was crossed up opposite lock, and all of that ground that Dreese lost in the kink the last time, he gained back by Ruhlman getting crossed up there in 8, and that's the deal. Even in these big high horsepower cars, momentum on a track like this, if you lose it, it just kills you.
Yeah, and it's even more important on a track like this. Dreese all over the rumble strips again. You saw a lot of dirt at the exit, but you talk about the momentum on a long track like this, you lose a little bit and then go down one of these long straightaways, it's going to hurt you for probably 15, 20 seconds.
I'm watching here, and a couple of the guys going into Canada Corner are a good car and a half width away from the outside edge of the track, where normally you're right off on that edge to give you as much, open the radius up as much possible going into the turn. I wonder if there's something down on the track that everybody's trying to avoid there. Meanwhile, back on board with Dreese. There's the biggest movers, and you can see Tommy Dreese, 9 spots he made up from where he was forced to start. When they did the engine change, they put him behind the Trans Am cars, not at the back of the entire field, because the GTA cars started in their own grouping, if you will. But Dreese, 9 spots he's made up and has been very quick. But you wonder, when you're working that hard that early in the race, did he use up too much car, and is he really need to just lay out for a little bit.
And that's
here.
one of the things you have to be careful with in these Trans Am cars. You can use up the brakes. Oh, and Michael Lewis has come to pit road. Calvin?
We believe there's a problem with the nose block. I see some grass in the radiators. They're clearing that out. They've got some straps ready, some duct tape, and there you can see it's able to move that around. So at these speeds, approaching very close to 180 miles an hour, that's really going to have an adverse effect on the handling and stability of this car. So Mike Lewis is in. Not a happy return here after that fire last year. He's looking for better things today.
Yeah, it was very quick in qualifying, but the race has gone away from him just a little bit. Back on board, Tommy Dreese, running 5th here at Road America.
Is the other class that runs within the Trans Am series, and that's the GTA class. Just like the Trans Am car, the GTA car is a 2-frame chassis, V8 power plant, and a composite bodywork. But that's where the similarities end. The GTA car has a much less sophisticated gearbox, suspension package, and obviously a very different aerodynamic package between the two. It's easy to see that this GTA car got its start on the short tracks, but interestingly enough, this car is driven by a road course specialist. Tim Barber, maybe that's why you're about to win a GTA championship if you take the green flag and finish 1 lap today. How is it running with Trans Am?
Well, knock on wood on that thing. Don't jinx it there. I've had a ball running with Trans Am all year. Fun guys to run with. Awesome venues. Just glad to be here.
Well, for Tim Barber, a green flag and 1 complete lap will bring him the GTA championship, his 2nd. He also won it in 2001.
And obviously, he's got that championship, Clint. We saw that earlier. Now, we're taking a look at the gentleman who is leading in the class at this stage, Steve Kelso, that Ringer's Resource, Redline Oil, K4 Motorsports, Monte Carlo, and having himself a very good run. And there's some of the stats that tell you the difference between GTA and Trans Am. And the GTA, very popular, especially West Coast. A lot of teams run from out there, so doing a nice job. Kelso leading it right now and having a very good run, actually running 15th overall. And when you're up against Trans Am and GT1 category Trans Am cars, doing a very nice job indeed. Meanwhile, speaking of nice jobs, Klaus Graf has continued to stretch it out. After that yellow, when that lead he had built collapsed, he's already back to about a 4-second lead. You can see the margin there. And two things that you have been saying to me while we're in break. One, you say the car seems to be coming off the turns incredibly well. And 2, you're noticing little bits of smoke, though, occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, Talk about the car coming off the corners, first of all. We've seen Pickett with big slides, same with Ruhlman, same with Tommy Dreese. But for Klaus Graf, when you watch that car come off the corner, it looks like it is just hooked up. You never see the rear end slide. He's not spinning the tires. So not having a problem there.
Dreese on board. You can see some of the smoke, or the dust, actually, that's coming off the track. Remember, these cars that we've seen a couple of times, whoa, and right in front of him, I think Ruhlman may have dropped a tire and just gets that cloud in the air. We saw a huge cloud early in the race at the exit of the kink. There, Dreese does the same thing and has to dip the brake once. Oh, he may have broken. Oh, I guess he's back at it. I thought for a minute maybe because he really pounded when he dropped off the exit curb there. And we see that, and all of that dust gets up on the track. It makes it a little bit dicey, especially in these high-speed corners. As you're tracking out of the turn and there's dust on the track, it gives one pause, as they say.
You know, the thing that's interesting about these Trans Am cars is that you look at them as being kind of these tanks, and they're big and they're heavy, and you think that they're you know, almost indestructible, and a great battle going on here.
Absolutely. That's John Bockham and Paul Fix, and that is Fix to the inside. Bockham working that outside line, and they are still side by each all the way down this front straight and pick. Finally, Paul Fix able to slide on through and able to take the position and picks up that 9th spot. And Paul Fix has had more width. He's GT1 type of car, which runs as Trans Am, but he's been the top finisher very frequently this year. And John Bockham giving him a great run, just not quite enough there. So Paul Fix picks up the spot. Bockham back to 10. Up front, it's still Klaus Graf leading. Here's your top 10. Without question, the toughest competitor ever seen in a series known for bump and run was Parnelli Jones. If you ever saw the fabled and feared number 15 in your rearview mirror, you were well advised to either pick up the pace or just wait and by. For Parnelli Jones, wide open throttle just wasn't fast enough. His was a credo of tenacity, and in 1970 it all paid off as he took the Drivers' Championship by one lone point over Mark Donohue. And that's the great history of this series, Jones, Donohue, and take a look at some of the other names that have run in Trans Am. Maybe not run full seasons necessarily, but at some point it has attracted literally the who's who of great road racing drivers. And one of them right now making a pass on Greg Pickett. That was Paul Gentilozzi. Finally, he's been hounding Pickett for a couple of laps, was able to sneak by and get underneath.
Looking at the back end of Gentilozzi's car, it looks like there is a lot of oil on that center section there on the rear end. As he went past Pickett, it looks very dirty in the back end, and we heard him talking about the oil before, so it'd be interesting to see if Gentilozzi does have that problem.
And Pickett gives that spot up, and now Calvin Fish, you talked about that oil earlier. Now he's got to deal with it.
He does, and I spoke to the Rocket Sports crew, and they said, we're seeing nothing. Paul is reporting nothing, so it may be something they don't see on their computers here down in pit lane. They're talking about Greg Pickett. He loves this place. It's where he made his Trans Am debut back in 1975, and then won the championship, clinched it here in 78, and really enjoys running these cars. He's got the most runner-up finishes in Trans Am history on the back of 3 second-place finishes in this current year, and of course the win at Edmonton. But it's great to see Gentilozzi and Pickett going at it. They're certainly two Trans Am names that will go down in history as being two of the best.
And the amazing thing for Greg Pickett, and we've joked as he drops a tire there again, loses a little bit of ground, he was called 10 years ago venerable. And then he comes back this year, and his win at Edmonton, folks, it is his 4th decade that he has won a Trans Am race. He is always fast. I think he said absolutely loves his racing as we're watching some of the field working through some of the lap traffic here and heading down the track now. Good battling going on right here. That is the number 78 of Hema Meyer that we're watching right there. That orange car, the 75, is Tim Cowan, the Cowan Truck Lines Ford Mustang. And these guys have been having a good war. Tim Cowan races here also at Road America a lot. He runs in the Central Division national level races, including the Toon Sprints and others, and is always a force to be reckoned with. And he and Hema Maher are right there. And the guy that they're closing in on is Paul Fix. And the guy we don't see anymore in the picture is John Bockham, who's dropped off, and Fix in trouble. Fix heads toward pit lane. Something wrong with the gentleman who this year has more top GT1 finishes in the Trans Am than any other driver, and I don't know that he's going to even make it up the hill. He is in dire straits.
Yeah, he obviously has some type of problem, but the thing that was interesting, he was able to drive it up that hill, Greg, and that is a very steep hill, so he obviously still has drive to the rear tire, so the engine must be running, but obviously something amiss in that Mustang and had to bring it to pit lane.
Speaking of engines, we were talking about Paul Gentilozzi and the fact that Calvin said he's on his second engine and we see all the oil. He actually had to go to Pickett and borrow an engine this weekend because they have had such problems in the Rocket Sports team. We were talking a little bit about that little whiffs of smoke we're seeing from the back occasionally of Graf's car. I mean, these cars look big, beefy, tough, but they are fragile race cars in many, many ways as we ride on board with Dreesy.
We talk about the engine problems that the entire Rocket Sports organization has had this weekend. Tommy Dreesy had the problem. Paul Gentilozzi had the problem. Klaus Graf has not so far. But if you're Klaus Graf, you got to be thinking, man, they're falling all around me. Hopefully I'll be okay. And I did notice early in the race some wisps of smoke coming out of the exhaust on the car of Klaus Graf, especially when he decelerated into a braking zone. Now, that might be just a little extra blow-by, a little extra fuel in the pipes as he lifts off, and it may just be burning it. But, any way you look at it, you got to be concerned about the engines there, especially if you're Klaus Graf.
Boy, and Tommy Dreesy coming out from underneath turn 13 in the bridge, all over the grass once again. They are racing hard. Going to go back, take a look at a battle that's starting to build here. The number 8, the Toyo Tires entry of Joey Scarollo with Hema Meyer right behind him. Scarollo, early in the season, Cleveland was one of the places, a couple other places, he was very fast. Boy, he's got some serious smoke happening there. Was very quick and felt really they had a car easy to podium, maybe even to win with a couple of times this year. Felt that way at Denver, got taken out in the very first turn at the start of the race. But Joey had a weird thing happen here. He said, we broke an axle, but it was almost like a spiral fracture of a bone. So the axle twisted apart. He said it was very, very strange. I'd never seen anything like that. Really set him back a little bit. Now, obviously, looks like some motor concerns, and Meyer is all over the back of him. And I don't think Joey's long for this track here.
And if you're Meyer and you're right there behind him, you got to be worried about the fluid that's probably coming out of the back of Joey Scarollo's car right now. Trying to stay out of the way. You see a lot of smoke off the right side. And don't know if he's running crossover pipes back there in the back or the right side of the engine that happens to be smoking. But where there's smoke, there's usually fluid on a race car. So I'm sure that he's on I'm a Mayor's probably on the radio to Jim Durhawk saying, we're getting a lot of fluid. Whether he is or not, I'm sure he's reporting it.
There's a good look at Cliff Eben, who is the fastest and highest placed GT1 category Trans Am car out there. Again, Eben, that's a tremendous talent over the years in that Baumgart's Tire and Wheel Lammers motor racing entry. And here's the battle we've been following. Now, Scarollo has given it up, and both Maher and Tim Cowan have been able to get by. So Scarollo falling down the order here, that's going to drop him back to about 11. And there's no way he's going to be able to hang on, obviously. So that pass has happened. Meanwhile, we move to the front, and Klaus Graf.
It may drop him even further back than that, because you got to believe eventually that thing's going to give up the ghost. But there's a good look at Klaus Graf. We were talking about these cars, and we've seen Tommy Dreesy dropping a lot of wheels off. Oh, and well, speak of the devil, there he is.
That's exiting 8, so he must have dropped the wheel on the right and hooked right back across the track. Pretty common in that spot of the track.
Yeah, you see a lot of the just coming off the corner. He tries to go back to the throttle. You heard him pick up the throttle, and the car just spins. We've seen that car loose. One of the things that I was going to say, here's another good look at it. Yeah, just from the apex out, he starts to get into the throttle, lights up the rear tires, and the car comes around. These cars, we talked about them being fragile from a power plant standpoint and all that, but we were also talking about they're fragile in general. You think that it's a big, heavy car and it's indestructible, but dropping the wheels off like that, you can do suspension damage, you can do bodywork damage and things like that. Calvin?
Well, you talk about the cars being fragile, Brian. Joey Scarollo has dropped a cylinder. That's what you're seeing with his car. Paul Fix came into pit lane. Input shaft gone, and John Falcom is also having problems. He's lost one of the axles. He's going to try and trundle around here and see the checkered flag this afternoon. So Road America is really taking a pounding on these cars this afternoon, Brian.
As are the curbs, and Greg Pickett pounding the curb coming out of turn number 1, and Randy Ruhlman closing him up. The battle is afoot for third. In 1983, a new face came upon the Trans Am scene. Speed Channel's own David Aubs, along with Willie T. Ribbs, joined the Diatley Camaro team, and as only Hobbs can, glided through a championship effort with the guile and the grace born of seemingly never letting anything bother him. The the man who once nodded off while awaiting the command to start engines at the Indianapolis 500, took 4 checkers that year on his way to the crown, including 1 here at Road America, and to our knowledge, took not 1 nap during the entire season.
I'm not sure if I believe that.
Yeah.
He certainly has taken naps at dinner when I've been to dinner with him.
He's taking naps in the booth at times, so... what a great competitor, though. I tell you, actually, that napping on the starting grid at Indy, I mean, that tells you about a guy who was able to just keep everything in check and energy reserves, I guess.
Talk about energy reserves. We talked about Randy Ruhlman having the flu, but right now he seems to be taking the fight to Greg Pickett. Pickett really loose coming through turn 1. The last time we saw him, and it looks like he may be losing the rear tires on that Jag, and looks like it's really sliding around a lot. We talked about him being able to save the tires earlier when he and Klaus Graf were battling, but I don't think he has the setup on the car that he really wants, and he may have burned down those rear tires. Randy Ruhlman really needs that 3rd place position because Klaus Graf, if he's able to win this race, is going to pull further and further away from Randy Ruhlman in the championship.
And we have just started our last lap. The white flag flies. Klaus Graf leads away. They're going to watch this battle for the 3rd spot here. Important championship implications. Graf wins. If Ruhlman can finish 3rd instead of 4th, that's just going to keep him that much closer in the championship. So one would think Randy's last lap here should be one of great aggression. If he's got anything left, now is the time.
He needs to do it down into turn 5 on this lap. There's Klaus Graf, the leader, once again. A little over or right at 3 seconds worth of lead right now. So he has everything pretty well in hand, but he just needs to make sure he gets that car to the checkered flag.
And his teammate Jen Losey sits 2nd, the owner of Rocket Sports. And Jen Losey playing the teammate role perfectly here, stealing points from Pickett and from Randy Ruhlman. So Jen Losey doing a nice job. And as we said before, if Jaguar wins today, they will clinch their manufacturers championship 3rd straight and 5th in Trans Am history. So this is a very, very important day for the manufacturers battle as well. So, and here's what we've been looking at. Jaguar, well, very likely looks like it's going to clinch. Jim Barber clinched the GTA Drivers' Championship, and Klaus Graf, especially if he wins here, will become the first German driver ever to win Rookie of the Year in Trans Am. So a lot of very special things developing, if you will, here. Meanwhile, here's that battle for 3rd, and still, right now, Ruhlman not able to get by Pickett. He's running out of time. Really one last big chance here, and that is going to be down in Canada.
Yeah, and he's not close enough to get that done. It looked like Randy on that last lap was going to be able to do it, but he bobbled a little bit coming off of 14, wasn't able to get alongside Pickett down the front straightaway. From that point in time on, it seems like he's just lost that charge just a little bit. Greg may have found something else, but the tires may be going away on Randy Ruhlman. They're certainly not going away on Klaus Graf.
The Rocket Sports team watching their 2 drivers now, Graf and Gentilozzi. It looks like they're staging up for a photo finish here. Gentilozzi pulling over and hits the brakes. Now going to go by Graf. This is showtime here, folks. Look at the team loving that. Here we go. Klaus Graf gets another win and moves further ahead in the championship. Gentilozzi, another podium finish. He's got a lot of those in his career. And Pickett holds off Ruhlman. And really, the only way Ruhlman was going to get by, he needed Pickett to make a mistake out of 14. It didn't happen, and so that is your top 3. Ruhlman will end up 4th, and Tommy Dreese spins, slides, off-track excursions and all, winds up in 5th.